Coming to you live, it's the AutoHub show with Ian and Jeff. Here we go.
Who said you can't teach an old dog new tricks? Hi, I'm Gail Rubenstein, the founder and CEO of a company called Retail Resilient, social selling for the car industry. And we help auto dealers, auto agencies, and vendors in the auto industry sell more cars, service more cars, and make more money using our social selling strategy. That includes TikTok, Instagram, Facebook, LinkedIn, and anything else you can think of. So if you're looking to invest thousands and make millions, we're definitely the social selling company for you. Like I said, who said you can't teach an old dog new tricks?
I was at Larry Foman's seminar. So happy I came, having such a good time. Thank you so much, Larry.
One of the best trainers in this area for sure. I don't know about anywhere else, but as far as I know, he's the best. So,
told you it was wise.
Take advantage.
Thank you for having me here.
I'm at Larry Feldman's seminar, and what I found is that what he's really good at doing with his knowledge and with his training, he's not filling a bucket, he's lighting a fire.
Ways to improve. Every month we want to improve better on what we did the month before, maybe the year before. It's about how fast we can get the cars done with quality work to get it to the front line, because that's where we make our money. And the bottom line is the longer it takes, the more money you spend. We want to get it down as low as possible. Right now, like I said, we're in a great stage. We're at 4.5 days. In recon, we want to know how quickly we can get the cars out of the recon process and to the front line. The average days in recon and then the time to line are the most important things that we look for. I'm Mike Burrell. I'm Service Director at JM Lexus.
And good morning and welcome. So we have a few books. These books are a little different than normal. I tried to come up with some that were interesting just because you eventually run out of books. So these were ones specifically on electric cars and specifically on electric, hybrid, and affordability. So how to buy an affordable electric car, a tightwad's guide, electric cars for dummies, and electric and hybrid vehicles. Go ahead, Jeff, with our disclaimer.
Well, of course, welcome everybody. Good morning. Just before we get started, I do want to recognize the auspicious date. Today is September 11th. Obviously, nobody have to have any explanation of the day, but we certainly do recognize that. And in the words of a great leader from World War II, it's a day that shall live on in infamy. So. Nevertheless, on that movement, the views and opinions today shared by that are those of our guests and not necessarily that of the AutoHub show or Ian and Nethercon. And please go to our website to read all of the details.
Thanks, Jeff. So today we're talking about EVs by 2025. Where do we stand? Part 2. And if you haven't already checked out, there was an article yesterday for Volvo, and they're trying to get to 50% by then, and hopefully 100 by 2030 is their game plan. And then our next 2 shows this month are salespeople pay plans and order taking, and customer happiness. Is it really possible? So let's get into it. Mr. Jeff, these are a few of the shows we're attending. We're not going to be to SodaCon, but SEMA and Used Car Week 2023 will be there. At least all will be at SEMA, and Jeff and I will be at Used Car Week. So here we go.
And of course, SEMA will be, Ian gets totally overwhelmed by all the cool stuff show.
Exactly.
And also don't forget our AutoHub show advisory panel the last Monday of every month, so we can go share all sorts of funky stuff, and Ian and I can sit back and let somebody else do all the talking. So today is our second show for the EVs by 2025. The first one was phenomenal. It kept going crazy, so we said we had to have another one and revisit it, which we have today. We have 3 of the 4 guests from that show. Again, one of them has taken September 11 off. But I would like everybody to introduce themselves. And one comment before we start is we're talking about EVs. We're talking about changing over. I mean, it's quite the thing. We've got to stop things, and EVs are the way to go. Yet when we get to an affordable EV. We just talked about the Chevy Bolt, got gobs of range. It's a good car. I've yet to read anything bad about it, and GM stopping making it. And all the other cars on our video list, which we couldn't show, but Ian could share the link for, try to get one. Try to get any one of those cars. I'm in the used car business. You watch the auction and you show the MSRP of any one of those. A Toyota BZ4, I think it was named by Elon Musk. They are 3 years away from orders. Yet there's dealers posting online. They're pulling about 8,000 over MSRP used over new MSRP, but they're basically new cars. Anyway, moving right along, guest, as asked, please introduce yourself and answer this first question. Our friend, Mr. X, and his people in Tesla are slashing prices and pissing off a lot of people that paid a lot of money for Teslas. How does this affect other manufacturers and the various government mandates of 2025 and 2030? And first of all, we'll go in order of who tuned in. First was our friend Matthew Groden, the auto man of Google, well, Google Canada anyway. Matthew, please introduce yourself and answer that question, please.
Thanks. Hi, everyone. Yeah, so I'm Matthew Grouden. Everyone calls me Groundy. That work. And I work at Google Canada, and I answer a wide array of questions on a regular basis. I mean, I think you answered part of the question already. Obviously, there's frustration if you just bought, and this is, anytime you buy something and somebody drops the price, unlike a television where you might be able to go back to Best Buy and get a discount on that TV, I think there's a lot of frustrated Tesla owners who bought at much higher prices, many months ago. But the net result of what I think is happening is they're selling more cars, right? So they're able to sell more cars because they're dropping the prices. They're putting that price, squarely into the range of various incentives, especially in the US, so that they can be eligible for those incentives, take advantage of more incentives and sell more vehicles. And I think it's shots fired across the bow of the other OEMs that they are, they were not expecting Tesla to drop prices at this point in time and throughout the course of this year. And I think that it demonstrates that Tesla currently has a lot of margin flexibility, that they're still making a lot of money per vehicle for a wide array of reasons. And this is them flexing their muscle, either because they can or because they're trying to crack the nut. You even heard Elon mention earlier earlier this year in one of his earnings calls that they may even start advertising, which is interesting because they've not spent any media dollars in advertising. They do a lot of other events. They do a lot of earned media. They do a lot of PR. They've not, they've never really had a television commercial or run ads in other platforms. So I think it's just as they get to this particular point of scale, they need to do more to get those vehicles into people's hands, and dropping the price is one of those levers, as we're all kind of well aware. Also on the book front, the Elon Musk biography comes out tomorrow. The Walter Isaacson book comes out tomorrow. I got a pre-order myself, arriving I think tomorrow. So that should be an interesting read. There's been lots of leaks of what's been said in that book that look pretty fascinating. So.
Perfect, thank you. So Joe made a comment. At first I thought it was a joke, but I think you meant Elon, but Elmo, so I thought Tickle Me Elmo was pretty good there. But thank you for those comments. It's very true, if you take a look, some of the OEMs have gone to EV vehicles, specifically Ford. They now have the day's supply on their lots of EVs. So you're going to expect those prices to start getting slashed. And the amazing thing about Tesla, which everybody said many, many times, is their newest car, forget the update, is 5 years old. And they're still selling like hotcakes. So anyways, our next guest is Ed I don't know, hopefully you got it right. Bernardin, you tell me, Ed. Bernardin, thank you. Ed, please introduce yourselves, tell us what you do, and please answer this question, the slashing prices and everything else.
So I'm Ed Bernard. I'm the VP for Motorsports and Racing Strategy at Siemens, and get involved a lot in bringing technology, sustainable technology, EV technology into racing. And there's a lot of big changes happening there. So that's where I spend most of my time, both on the technology and also the partnership side. When it comes to our friend Elon, I think Matthew sort of hit on all the big points there. If I owned a car right now, if I owned one of his cars and I was trying to sell a used one, I'd be pretty mad. I'd be pretty mad if I missed out on this big discount. But I think his competitors, like you said, they were surprised, and hey, they've got the power. They have the margin on what they're doing right now that they can play that card. And I think you go back to the basics of economics, supply and demand. He takes an X% discount, and so he's going to lose that margin. But then he picks up the tax credit. So it's almost like you can get the increase in the amount you can sell by almost doubling what your discount is, thank you to the tax credit. So I'd have to say he's a good businessman. He knows what he's doing.
He's obviously a good businessman. I mean, he's gone from, only a few multi-millions to like multi-billions by all means. And that's good business. The interesting part too is, and I think perhaps if you take a look at, their cars haven't changed that much. They've improved things. They've improved batteries. They've improved this and that. But their R&D was paid for a long time ago. And now they're doing what all the manufacturers are doing. Their margins gone huge. So why not cut prices? Perhaps a little more aggressive than the consumer may have wanted. Interesting part, it hasn't affected their used prices that much. That's the interesting part. And of course, our last guest who was just logged in, who let me know, is the person who I want to be like most when I grow up, because she lives an amazing life, if you ask me, is our good friend Pratina Gentile from Globe and Mail and Post and all that other stuff, who gets to drive absolutely everything. She's got Stephen Winkleman on speed dial from Lamborghini. I'm sure she has Elon Musk on there. She knows everybody everywhere. So, Katrina, the question is, please introduce yourself to build on that one. And the question is that Tesla's slashing prices, and they pissed off a lot of people that have just bought cars, a year ago or whatever, and getting other people, I guess. How does this affect the other manufacturers and then the government mandates of 2025, 2030?
We've got lots there. It's true. He's Elon Musk has slashed prices, like 5 or 6 times in the last year. It's crazy. The prices have really come down, and you're seeing some manufacturers react. You're seeing drops in prices of other vehicles. The F-150 Lightning has dropped in price. I think it's going to have an impact on other manufacturers, really looking at what the prices are, especially when you look at different parts of the provinces and territories across Canada, where some people really take advantage of different rebates, which certainly helps bring down the price, especially if you're living in Quebec and BC. Ontario, not so much. Of course, we don't have any provincial rebates, unfortunately. So it is going to have an impact. And, I think people that own Teslas are pissed off by the move. Like you say, they paid a lot of money for their vehicles. And when you see those prices come down, it's infuriating. So I think he has a lot of people that are kind of turning their back on him and complaining about many other things as well.
I'd actually like to ask your input on this, because you weren't there for the initial video where Ian did the top 10 most affordable EVs. And you're probably more connected than any of us. Other than just cost of building them, why in heck would GM drop the Volt?
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Well, it does have the last generation batteries, and those last generation batteries, for me, when I look at them, I wouldn't recommend that car because of those last generation batteries. There were a lot of fires associated with them, a lot of problems associated with them, and they've moved to their new Ultium package. So that is a better battery pack. It can go longer distances. It has flexibility, so they can put those batteries in a number of vehicles right across the board. So they can put them in Cadillacs, they can put them in, the GMC Hummer, they can put them in Chevy vehicles as well. So it makes sense for them from, a business perspective, because they can bring more cars to market faster. And as you know, GM is really ambitious. They want to bring out 30 new EVs by 2025. So that's part of the game plan. But that was a very affordable vehicle compared to what we're seeing now. Most EVs, especially, pure battery electric vehicles, they're, 45,000 and up. And they're not exactly the most luxurious vehicles too at that price point. Because at that price point, you think, oh, I want to have some of the nice bells and whistles, the heated steering wheel and heated front seats. Well, a lot of them don't have that. It's pretty bare bones and basic. And those interiors are changing too, with a lot of recycled materials inside as well. You won't find those leather seats. I just saw the 2025 Volvo EX30. They came into Canada last week, and this is Volvo's fourth electric vehicle. And starting price is around 54,000, so it still qualifies for rebates, but the range is only about 440 kilometers. And that's without, the radio on and driving high speeds and the air conditioning on and all that stuff. So it's pretty bare bones, very minimalistic inside. Again, recycled materials made of cork bottles from the wine industry inside. So very environmental, but consumers are used to something that is a bit more luxurious, which if you're paying 55 or above for a vehicle, you want a little bit more luxury in it than into what some of these EVs are offering.
By the way, my favorite term is vegan leather.
Oh,
I
yeah.
love vegan leather. That goes right up there with Impossible Burger.
That's right.
Thank you so much, Ian.
What about premium vegan leather? Isn't that
Oh yeah.
that's a new one I hear.
Well, Lucid's got Lucid. I love it. Is sustainable leather, which is very interesting. But getting into a Lucid, for me, getting into a Lucid to me is like heaven. So.
Well, there's actually a really good article talking about Volvo that you brought up. You were talking about Volvo. There's an article, I think it was yesterday, about Volvo and their plans between now and 2030. So it was kind of interesting, sort of what they're looking at doing. And I'm not sure what the relationship there between Volvo and Polestar is. I know they're kind of a similar brand, but it's definitely interesting there. So the next question. Oh, go ahead. Sorry.
Then I was thinking, they're very close connections. Both of those vehicles are made in China. From Geely. So it's again, some people are, reluctant to jump on that bandwagon. They don't want to buy a vehicle that is made in China. So yeah.
Yeah, definitely interesting.
In Sweden?
No, designed in Sweden, made in China.
Assembled in China.
Chinese for common sense, you're saying.
Yeah, that's right. And they're very ambitious, and they're on target. Like Volvo, I think that's my article that you probably saw. They're on target to do 25 or 50% of sales by 2025 to be electric vehicles. They're now in Canada about 34%, and by 2030 they want to be 100% EV sales right across the world.
Wow, impressive. Yeah, it might have been your article. I think it was Global Mail, so it could be your article. It's possible.
Plug it.
Yeah, it's worth the read. A really good article if you're interested in electric, and more importantly, as we talk about moving towards 100%. I know we were talking about 50% for the show. Anyway, is the growth mandate realistic, and how can we pay for it? So obviously you just wrote an article on this, so maybe you can speak to this. Do you think that's a realistic mandate for all manufacturers? Do you think Volvo and others will make it there? What do you think?
I don't think so. To be honest with you, I don't. It's only a couple of years away. It's an ambitious target, and I know they have to have targets, and they have to, make some ambitious targets like that. So I applaud them for doing that, but I don't think they're going to make that by 2025 or 2030. I think it's going to be a little bit longer. Ernst & Young just released a study this morning on readiness globally of different countries, and Canada ranked 9th in terms of EV readiness. That includes getting the infrastructure ready. It is better though than the year before. I think the year before it was in 13th place, but leading the pack of course is China, Norway, the US. So definitely ahead of us. But I think we still have a lot to do in terms of the infrastructure. across the board. But there are, you have manufacturers coming together. 7 manufacturers across Canada are coming together. Hyundai, Honda, and they're building an EV supercharging network across North America. So, and many manufacturers are also using Tesla's North American charging standards as well when Tesla opened them up. So for GM, that's going to all help them as well and improve. But I think it's still a little ways away.
Thanks for that. Ed, what do you think? You're in the racing side, but what do you think about these mandates?
Well, I think you have to take a step back and you say, well, do the mandates help people adopt and want to buy electric cars? The mandates are great, but there are things missing, right? Like infrastructure. I mean, that's the thing I would worry about. If I was going to buy an electric car, I would say, hey, can I charge it on that long trip or not? And you can sit back and say, well, I demand by this year or that year that we have X% of sales be electric or hybrid electric, whatever it might be. But then you have to do the other half, which is provide that infrastructure or whatever else people are going to need, the range that these cars are going to need, so that people are comfortable with an electric vehicle like they are with an internal combustion vehicle now. So, but in the end, the simple answer is I think they're aggressive, and it actually depends if you're talking pure battery electric or hybrid. Plug-in, that type of thing. I think it changes when you get away from the pure battery electric a little bit. Then probably you have a much better chance of making the mandates.
Thanks for that. We did have a question. What would happen from the chat and also from online if there were no government incentives on sales? So I'll ask that one next. But Matthew, what do you think? You're the data guy at Auto. What do you think about these incentives?
I mean, I think what's the latest number? The latest number is we're cusping over 9% of sales. That is a steep curve to get from 9 to 20 in like 3 years, less than 3 years. Is it possible? I said this in the spring as well, I think, in the last episode. Possible, yes. Likely, no. 2 things and this kind of actually partially addresses, I think, the incentive question. Without Ontario having an incentive, and because of the cost of the vehicles, as we were discussing around, like, why is there no Bolt anymore? That's going to be tough. But if 2 things came together very quickly, which I don't suspect they're going to, if we had an incentive in Ontario that made it a little more compelling for the average consumer, not just the more high-end buyer that can afford a Tesla or afford a Lucid Air, beautiful vehicle, very expensive, right? I think it's unlikely, and also without more collaboration with the OEMs to actually bring those vehicles here, right? Because we see in general unless there is a provincial mandate, unless there are incentives like we have in Quebec and British Columbia, then the OEMs don't allocate the inventory here, and so that's why it is very hard if you want to get your hands on a more affordable, Kia Niro EV or an Ioniq 5. They're just not there, or if they are, they're kind of priced out the wazoo with magical fees that no one can really explain. So.
Yeah, I have a question. It seems to me that a kind of a common sense approach to this might be to also put a little bit focus more on hybrids, which some of the manufacturers appear to have dialed into, and to understand the concept that you can't force a market. It's like telling your kid, right? The best way to get your kids to do something is to tell them not to do it. And to say, and this is what you're all going to drive, and that's it, and we're mandating it, seems dangerous and foolish. Whether you love electric vehicles or not, to take the choice out of people's hands and saying, this is what we're doing and there's no alternative, just doesn't seem reasonable to me.
That's a great thought. I mean, Gail, I think, is on the call. I think she just bought a hybrid Jeep. Gail, I mean, was there a reason you bought that over, say, an electric car? If you want to comment. I think she's still here.
Oh, she's on
super silent mode.
Ian, I'll answer that.
Yeah.
I bought the hybrid Jeep because Jeeps predominantly have the highest resale value of the mass-produced vehicle on road. Hybrid gave me the additional option of low cost for city driving and lowered cost for highway driving. As a previous Tesla owner, having 5 of them, I will never drive a Tesla again, just because the brand itself, what they've done to the people who were early adopters. And the last part is, I personally, being in the mining industry as well as the automobile industry, do not see the mandate ever being coming close to being achieved, as with the social economic climate with China. The Chinese government controls approximately 85% of the critical mineral industry in the world that are required to build batteries. They can shut it down at any time they wish, and they can keep it in-house into China. They can do anything they want. They control it. I got out of the mining industry because they control the graphite industry, and they would open up their mines when necessary and close them when not. Just to meet our mandates, we have to build approximately 450 graphite mines a year in Canada, the second largest graphite producing nation in the world, and it takes 20 years to get permitting. So how are we going to meet those mandates? We can't. We just can't. It's pie in the sky. It's like saying, you know what, I want to go to Mars. Well, is that
actually, Peter, Elon can help you with the Mars thing. And as far as
I'm just looking for volunteers.
That I can get there? Yes. Is it probably? No.
Our boy Joe Biden, the only reason that Trudeau's no, Katrina put me up to it. You know, I would never start any trouble. He said, we're not going to do anything to harm China. Listen, I'm elderly and I'm a musician. So I always like to pull up some obscure fact. There was a great satirist named Tom Laird. Some of you may remember him, super popular in the early 60s. And he had a great line in the song called Werner von Braun. He said, once all the Germans were warlike and mean, but that couldn't happen again. We taught them a lesson in 1918, and they've hardly bothered us since then. The fallacy behind all of this is we have resources. We are a huge country, and there's things we could do to produce and make, but instead we're relying on people who like to obliterate us. And that's not up for debate. That's just common sense. So if we had serious adults running our stupid government, sorry, Jeff, maybe somebody'd say, let's take a common sense approach to making things better. Everybody reasonable wants the environment to be better and things to be cheaper, but it just seems like I always quote General Motors in the 80s, ready, fire, aim. Let's put this policy out. Let's just jam it down everybody's throat and let's see what happens. Sorry, Katrina, you did say be as unreasonable as possible. I like to follow your instructions.
Well, I'm just going to add one last thing to that, Larry. The social networking of the people in play with this has gone out and said, hey, let's bring it to the masses through social, and let's make them understand that this is a reality. So Jim Farley went out on a road trip from the Lightning, and then the U.S. Department of Energy Secretary went out and did the same. Both of them were complete failures. Jim Farley, in the video, watching him drive the Lightning, he goes by a wind farm with wind turbines not even moving, and discuss how hard it is to potentially find a charger that works. And then with the U.S. Department of Energy Secretary, she turns around and has her staffers put gas cars in electric charging stalls so that she can get a spot when she arrives. It's astronomical on the stupidity of these people trying to push this on us. And again, as an early adopter, I wasn't pushed upon it. I still have a hybrid, but I just don't look at this as being a possibility moving
Peter, I love you, but I think you're being unfair. I always like to be the voice of reason. with the wind turbines, they can't concentrate on killing whales and still providing electricity. And if you really want to laugh and look at insanity, the state in the United States that sells the most EVs is California. This is a state that regularly has brownouts because they can't handle the electric demands they have now. So they're going to be the ones to lead the charge when they can't handle what they have now. You know what? This whole show makes no sense. Let's order some pizza. We'll charge it to Jeff Polo. Let's have some fun. Katrina, it's so nice to see you. You're right about these guys. They're both crazy. Thank God I'm here as the voice of reason.
But Larry, I mean, I think if we go back to
the show about nothing.
No. That would be Seinfeld. Let Mr. Bernard talk, will you? John Locke is always rude. I apologize. Hey, go ahead, please. Remember, he's not from America. He's a Canadian. Go ahead, hey.
Yeah, I'm close to the border. I'm in Boston, not too far away. But Mr. Feldman, one of the first things that you said was the hybrid. That makes a lot more sense. And I think you want to get people out there adopting these types of vehicles. And if you think about it, how many miles do you typically drive in a day, right? I'll speak for myself, but maybe over a period of a 3-month period, day to day, less than 50 miles, maybe less than 100 for sure. Every now and then I take that big trip. Perfect thing for a hybrid, right? I'll be running mostly electric. I could charge it at home in the evening if I wanted to when I'm in that under 100 range. And then if I'm on the highway, you can have a small internal combustion engine because you don't need that much horsepower to keep a car running at 50, 60 miles per hour, right? So that's a great way to get more people using electric vehicles. And by the way, you have a lot less batteries. So all the other problems you were talking about.
Let me interrupt you just for a second. And now I'm being dead serious. The problem is, who can tell with me? Listen. Here's the problem with the policies. I just heard you speak. Now, I've never had the pleasure of meeting you before, and it's great to meet you. You know what you sound like? You sound like a reasonable, intelligent person. And reasonable, intelligent people are like to say, I opine, right? It's a Socratic term, but I could be wrong, in my humble opinion. But here's the beauty of this. What you just said, I'm with you 100%. But the lunatics that are making the policies, they want to mandate it for everybody. So let me ask you a question. Since forget about planes and boats and all that crap, most of the stuff that's delivered, whether it's goods or foods or whatever, are delivered by trucks. Now these lunatics want to make it too expensive to get trucks across the country and probably across your country. So once again, if you said we're going to introduce things that make energy more efficient and make the environment better, who in the right mind? It's like saying who's for war? Everybody would come up for it. But the mandates is so wide and so far reaching, and the ripples are so big that they're hurting everything and everything. Listen, right now, this is not political, this is logical. Right now, we just saw Joe Biden the day before 9/11 shake hands with the head of Saudi Arabia, who many people believe was tied in. Okay? Let's forget about money. Let's forget about cars. How about security? How about if you're enslaved to people that control you? We've seen what the Arabs have been able to do to the world by increasing or decreasing prices as they see fit. And now put that on China's plate and say everything we do is going to be controlled by what you produce is frightening. If you were running, and by the way, I vote, Boston is just fine. Your people are nuts too, like they are in Philadelphia. But you just seem eminently reasonable. But does anybody on this program think these policies are reasonable? Because they're not saying, here's, if you would like to go electric, we'll give you an incentive. Nope, we're getting rid of gas cars. It's crazy, Ed. I'm sorry, Ed. I get a little animated when I meet people from Boston. It's a Philadelphia thing. I'm still suffering from what Bill Russell did to my Sixers.
Well, you shouldn't be suffering after yesterday.
Well, I have to tell everybody.
Well, I'm Philly, brother. We see a problem for every solution. We were up 16-0, and we got lucky to win.
Yeah,
we're proud here. We're proud of what we were able to do. That's
I'm going to share a link to my new technology on the chat, which is going to guarantee you can drive cross country in anything electric, and it's a simple attachment to your vehicle. So you can just check that in the chat. Guaranteed. And I want money for it. Very interesting that Peter brought up that comment about the U.S. Energy Secretary. And I'm leaving the politics of EV aside and everything else, because it's a highly politically charged comment. But you've got the energy secretary, and this tells us, Larry mentioned about leaders. So here is this leader that is promoting green tech. She drives, I read the article, I can't remember where it was from, like from two cities in the States, in Georgia, etc., and didn't even plan the trip out properly. The only planning was, oh my God, get somebody to drive ahead and park an EV thing. So we do have an issue here, and we know we have an issue. There isn't enough charging stations. Tesla, whatever subsidiary it is, they're going to start building superchargers like crazy with all that money from Ford and GM and Volvo and Toyota and everybody else. So they're going to change that. But how are we going to pay for everything? How are we going to pay for our infrastructure and roads if we need these infrastructure? I mean, my numbers are probably 20 million less new internal combustion cars sold by 2030, and maybe 100 million less by 2035. I have no idea where I got that from. But the fact is how are we going to pay for things? Then what happens is, with that great incentive, when you go buy your Tesla at 54 grand, and by the way, I have to tell people, up here in Canada, I read something the other day, the average new car is about 59,000 Canadian.
66,000. 66,000 average new car in Canada.
And that was American then, 59,000 US. Oh, yeah, 66 grand. So these things aren't luxury cars anymore and everything else. So how are we going to do it? But I'm going to ask Patrina, because she's staring right at me. But I have to tell you, I'm really upset with GM and the Bolt, because their sales were on fire and they canceled it.
I'm still stuck.
Please, before you get started, Patrina, I've been urged by Joe Boris not to say fire and then electric cars in the same sentence.
Okay. You know what? I'm still stuck on another point Peter made. And I agree, like with the hybrids. Yes, the hybrids are definitely needed to make this transition to all electric. It certainly, reduces your range anxiety. They're still expensive. And, Peter, your Jeep has like 30 kilometers of range. Like, what's the point when it's that little?
It's actually 50 kilometers of range in my Jeep, but the issue is, as Ed said, what's your average trip? I live in Niagara-on-the-Lake, which is 160 kilometers almost from Toronto.
That's 100 miles for Americans.
100 miles for Americans. My average trip in my Jeep is somewhere around the 60 kilometer range, which is 40 miles. But funny enough, I do about 80,000 kilometers a year in the truck.
Wow.
So I look at that's 50,000 miles because I'm constantly traveling distances in it. But I'll do a long distance and then a bunch of short trips. But the benefit to me is that when I had my Tesla, my last long trip was down to DC in it, and it took me 9 hours to drive a 6.5 hour drive to DC in my Tesla. That 2.5 hours is worth way more money to me, and because I can't get that back.
Peter, that was because of Trump's motorcade.
No. But it's a time thing. Sure. And if we talk about environmental, I will put that argument up against anybody that EVs are not environmentally friendly. They're not. Being in the mining industry, it's not. It's not morally friendly. It's not ethically friendly. It's not environmentally friendly. And if we look cradle to grave, I will guarantee that a ICE vehicle powered by fossil fuels is more environmentally friendly than an EV. The only thing is we don't have a wild drive. That's it.
I'm going to buy a Hummer H1 and run it on biodiesel. Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, my feeling is basically that it's the power of options. I mean, when I sold vehicles years ago and hybrids were a new thing, really it's more of an interview with the customer. Like, I'm not saying you're right or you're wrong on what you're buying, but how are you using the vehicle? And what makes sense may not be an electric car for you. Not saying that might not be a good option, but to Peter's point and other people's points, if I'm doing a lot of driving, that may not be the best option. I have the discussion often with Uber drivers and cab drivers all over the place, where they're comparing hybrid to electric to sometimes diesel, other things, and really it's a question of how much driving are they doing and what makes the best sense for them. And I think that's the key point here is the government saying you must do this is probably not a good long-term plan, versus the manufacturer saying, okay, we have demand for these vehicles, incentivize them to transition from one to the other possibly, which I think is a wise move. Now how quickly that happens is another question, but go ahead, Jeff, it's your question.
Yeah, okay, my question, what are you doing stealing it? No, I'm just kidding. So Ed, what's your thoughts on this? How that, because things are going to be paid for, and if you start taking, and by the way, nobody can argue that your average EV is considerably heavier than the same size and segment of an ICE car. So how are we going to do this? Yes, we're going to have to tax it, but what's going to happen then?
Well, of course, there's government, programs like you're seeing out there now, and those are both at the federal and the local level. So there's certainly that. But then I think there's also, especially at the local level, like here in the Boston area, you're starting to see local governments working together with shopping malls or restaurants or whatever it might be to get charging stations in there. So that's another thing. The utilities ultimately are going to be making a lot of money. All that money is going into gas is not going to be going to the utilities. Maybe there needs to be some sort of a profit tax or something like that on the utilities. They're going to be making a little bit of money here. They definitely stand to profit. And of course, there is the gasoline tax. Well, you're not using gasoline in an electric car. How do you handle that? I know in Texas, they've got some new laws down there where they want to have a specific, you buy an electric car, you got to pay X amount as to make up for the fact you're not going to be paying the gasoline tax. Maybe there might be a way where you can see how many miles you drive in an electric car and somehow you start to share that tax burden there. So it's probably going to be a combination of public, government, and taxes are going to probably play a little bit of a role there. I'm sure if they're necessarily new taxes, but maybe a shift in how taxing is going to be.
Ed, if you'll allow me, I'll quote Oscar Wilde, who said, "Anybody who robs Peter to pay Paul can count on the support of Paul." So I'm sure whoever's going to profit from it is going to think it's the greatest thing since Swiss cheese. And the people that feel like they're getting dissed are not going to be for it.
That's how life works, right? Pretty much.
Yes, sir. Yes, sir.
So Matthew, what's your thoughts?
I'm not a politician. I don't know. I think Ed's right. I think it is going to be some combination of taxation. It will be a shift in taxation. It won't be gas. I also wonder, at what point does gas become more expensive? At what point do we reach tipping point where there are, fewer gas vehicles and gas becomes more expensive? And do governments, not in Canada, but in multiple places around the world, de-incentivize people to put gasoline into their cars by making it more expensive? I don't know. I don't really know. There's math there. There's probably a spreadsheet. Some bureaucrat somewhere is.
But doesn't that also go with de-incentivize buying an EV? Many people, we just said, Katrina mentioned that the Teslas are now becoming into that EV incentive areas in Quebec and BC, and I'm sure California and whatever. So doesn't that go hand in hand? If they make gas more expensive and de-incentivize an EV, I do know some of these private charging stations now will cost you like $10 to charge your car, or more.
Yeah,
so
it's a complex problem.
Justice?
Yeah, it is. I don't have a good answer for you on this one. I think it's there was an article just a little while ago. Katrina, I don't think it was yours, but it was a Globe and Mail that basically.
I can't believe that.
I know. That's prolific. But about how we forget, we don't realize in Canada that we like the most gas guzzling vehicles, and we have among the cheapest gas and the freest roads, that we don't pay for tolls. It was quite eye opening because I had never really had that all laid out for me very clearly as it was in that article. But that anytime that there's a pay for outside of the 407 here in Ontario, if anyone puts a pay for service road in place, eventually the province or the feds buy it and make it a public road. So there's probably ways, we just don't like them here in Canada because we've been accustomed to free roads and cheap gas and big vehicles. So I don't know.
Well,
No,
what's interesting though, if you look in Europe, and I haven't done it that much, but Katrina probably has, but she's like a world traveler. But you go onto those toll roads and they're magnificent. Oh my gosh, they're like glass. They're fantastic. They've got some of the greatest amenities you can have. I remember 2 years ago, I pulled over to the side of the road because I thought I lost something. And within a minute was an emergency road service car there. I know they'll sit on you don't get anything and everything else. But they're public roads.
I mean, when I want to feel good about the way I do ride the 407, like I do get on the 407 because it's faster and less occupied and immaculate. So
Here's one thing on that, gentlemen and Katrina. The when we talk about roads and road tax and road usage and the weight of the EVs are actually tearing up the roads faster than the ICE vehicles because of their weight, because the roads were engineered for the average weight of an ICE vehicle, not the average weight of an EV. Now, let's look at that one step further. Let's look at structural engineering of buildings and parkades. How many parkades are designed to increase their weight-bearing loads by double? They're just not there, and that is.
You're playing into Joe's rhetoric here. You're playing in there saying get rid of cars. So
as he should.
It's not real estate, baby.
But it's playing into Joe's rhetoric is only going to make anybody seem smarter. So let him go.
So I just want to make sure I understand this. Peter hates Elon Musk. Joe Burrows hates Henry Ford. Am I the only reasonable person on this broadcast? We all just get along, fellas.
And you hate Biden.
This is we're going to rename this show the AutoHub. Instead of the AutoHub show, it's going to be the Auto and Eat show.
Hold on. I actually.
My time here has not been wasted.
I can't make things better, but I can make us all worse.
Elon is probably one of the most brilliant people on the planet. I don't hate him. I just hate Teslas.
Let's be clear.
So we're back to the premise of the show. You have the option to buy a Tesla or not to buy a Tesla. And as long as they come up with things that can improve the environment and improve the economy and make people's lives better long term, it's great. It just is difficult to mandate that and perhaps source all the products out of China, who's an enemy to the world. That's my opinion.
I just recommend taking a vacation cruise in the South China Sea now before it becomes militarized. Ian, next question.
Yeah, I mean, obviously we're getting to the end of the show, but when you look at sales targets and when you look at incentives and when you look at discounting, which is obviously happening, what's the biggest hurdle other than these three things for these companies to make these targets? Do you think they can really convince every customer to buy an electric car, even with all these things? I mean, what is your thought, Ed?
Well, solely there's cost, but you like you said, they stopped making the Bolt, but there's some other cars, in that 30 range now, and you add the tax credits, now you're down into the 20s, and like Katrina said, GM's probably being smart here. They want to have a common battery across all their models. They're probably going to come out with another one that's in the same range with the good batteries, with the ultimate batteries in them. So price is one thing. I think charging infrastructure is a real concern. I mean, my son has a Model 3. We drove it from Baltimore to Boston, no problem. You look on the map, there's those high voltage chargers everywhere, pretty much. It wasn't a concern. But that's not going to work if you live in Wyoming or maybe British Columbia or wherever it might be. So I think those are probably I think that range anxiety, charging infrastructure, that type, depending on where you live, is something you got to address. Because in the long run, I sort of like the idea of the electric drive. It's just low maintenance. Look at all the parts you got in an ICE engine, and now you're substituting that for just a few pieces in an electric motor.
Yeah, that's
So you know what though? You're right. But here, being in the used car industry, we had this discussion a couple of shows ago. It's a scary thing buying a used EV. Some of them, I mean, yes, I can't remember, Red Stevie brought it up. Some of the older ones didn't have the thermal insulation on their batteries, et cetera, et cetera. But still, we're seeing a lot of these cars that the degradation of the battery, where they started with a 180, 200 mile range, you get an 8-year-old one, and yes, they're going to get better, but they're down to a 25 or 30 mile range. And that's the difference with an ICE. And I agree, there's lots more moving parts, but you can buy a 20-year-old internal combustion engine car and fix something that goes wrong. It's going to be a little tough to replace batteries until somebody comes out with a reconditioning process or a affordable replacement battery.
Yeah, I think a lot of it is right there on the used side. But go ahead.
I think you have to, it's not so black and white, right? Like, how long before those batteries get to 35%? How many, is it 50K, 75K? I'm not quite sure. And it probably depends on how you use it and how you charge it and how cold or how hot it is outside. It'd be interesting to look at what are the factors that impact that. And also, I think whenever I've got this thing called an e-foil. It's like a surfboard with an electric motor under it. I'll tell you what, the battery life, they give you all these instructions on exactly how to treat those batteries so you can double the life. Yeah. Charge it up to this or only down to that, wait 45 minutes before you recharge. So there's all sorts of things that you have to take into account. And is that going to change in 5 years as battery technology changes? But I don't know.
I have a question for you, Ed, before we go, because I'm going to forget. I want to know what you're doing to engineer exciting sounds into electric race cars, because I watch Formula E and it doesn't excite me because the sound is better than some of the others. So we've got to do something. So when NASCAR goes electric, it goes by, all that hair stands up on your own or something.
Well, believe it or not, Jeff, they actually have devices that replicate the sound. I've seen that on some of the vehicles. They're worried about that with motorcycles too.
And even the Hyundai Ioniq 5, the N version, which is their high performance version, they just brought that out. And so that's their racing version with the DNA in it. And it has speakers inside and speakers outside the vehicle, 3 different sounds that you can choose that actually sounds like, an internal combustion engine.
Can you get the sound of an X-Wing fighter?
That's possible.
I need to know that.
You can definitely get something that sounds like an alien landing craft or something like that.
It doesn't sound like that. They're backing up. I do know in the BMW, the iX SUV, I think it is, Hans Zimmer has created something very good inside. And the only thing that's good outside of the Porsche is the Taycans, and the Audi has it too, where it goes by and makes these weird sounds. So yes, we have to have that.
I think we did actually have a video on a past show where there was actually I'm not sure the company, but they're working on this in terms of simulating this. So I think you will see that as an option as this gets bigger for people to customize the sound on the vehicle. So we'll see how that goes, but definitely interesting. Katrina, what do you
By
think?
the way, one special thing that I have to bring up, the other thing that's standing in the way of their success is for the crowd with the big chains and the big things hanging around their neck. They've got to create something to go cruising with loud noises to attract members of the opposite sex. because Lambo and all these guys have got that now with the sports setting. Not far from me is a big nightclub district, and these guys drive around on sports setting. So come on,
They're working on that. They're working on it. The Revolto will have that, and I'm going to be driving that in Rome in a couple of weeks. So I'll let you know. And that's a hybrid. That's a first hybrid. It has like 10 kilometers of range on it. Again, I'm like
There. You're going
Katrina,
wrong to drive it.
Katrina, be careful, because Jeff's next going to tell you the best way to attract a man is get perfume that smells like new car leather. This guy's like
50% of the time, it works all of the time.
The Fiat 500, the electric version, they spend 6,000 hours defining the sound of that engine to make it sound exactly like a sports car.
This goes back to the first thing I said before the show started. And Matt, if we actually cared about the environment, we would have spent those 6,000 hours planting trees.
Well, 100% correct. 100% correct.
Ridiculous.
Hey Joe, I always say if you got a dog and you point, your dog looks at your finger, not where you're pointing. If we don't know what we're trying to accomplish, we're never going to accomplish it.
So, because what I need is an electric car that sounds just like my old Fiat 124.
Well, on the racing thing, though, I had on my Future Car podcast, I had Bob Bell. He's the technical director for Renault Formula One. He's had champions and all that. And I said, Bob, what's going to happen in 2030 when it goes electric or whatever it is? What about the sound, the smell of the gas, and all that? And you know what he said? Hey, by the time that happens, most of the people that care about that are going to be dead.
So absolutely right. Absolutely right.
Look at all the heat that they rode when these cars, the new generation, the hybrid era, didn't scream. So yes, but I have to.
The younger generation doesn't care. When you look at the growth of Formula One in North America, and you look at the explosion of Formula One coverage and IndyCar, because it's rising tide lifts all ships. When you see what they share, they're not talking about the roar of the engine or the smell of the gas. They're talking about passes. They're sharing videos with music over it. They're kind of upset that they can't have conversations with each other and share their social feeds and read it when they're at the track. I'm not kidding.
No,
this is something that was
that
brought up at the Indy 500. I was there for the 100th running with my Juan Montoya on my ticket, because Montoya was my guy, still is. Even though he's retired in a tax dodger and all that. The boy can drive. I don't know what to tell you. But, that was a big issue, was that people were complaining that it was too loud. So nobody under 50 cares about the noise in this. I'll tell you that right now. It's not a thing.
Interesting. Jeff, we're almost out of time.
We should do an episode on racing. And
we should.
If Joe's bring it up, it's pretty key. I think it's changing, just like commercial cars are changing.
And we need to invite some lot attendants, because every one of them seems to be able to go 0 to 90 in 3 seconds in a car.
The valet special.
I have never been more scared in my life than taking my GTR to a Nissan service bay in rural Ohio. I was like, oh my God, I'm never going to see this car again.
Everybody, we're up. I gotta tell you, we could stay on this show for another 3 hours. This has been a lot.
Absolutely. Guys, great episode, man. Great. I know you don't need me to tell you, but this is one of my favorite ones.
Absolutely.
Thank you so much. And I still want to be adopted by Rita. Can you bring the adopted son that's a little bald to there?
You need an assistant? Can we just show up?
Katrina, you'll save on baby clothes with Jeff. I'll say that.
Yeah. He's still dependent.
Maybe not on diapers.
Excuse me, they pay me to annoy everybody and be controversial. Just stay in Canada, okay?
I do have to say one thing, Joe. Canada has proven that we are holding something in the neighborhood of between 40 and 60% of the world's forests. So booming, baby.
Yeah. Anyway, have a great week, everybody. Thanks for coming. And thanks for all the comments. Great show. Bye for now.
Stay well. Bye-bye.
That was fun.
Oh la la. What?
Thanks for joining us. It was a great show, and follow us anywhere you would like on your favorite podcast, on Facebook, on LinkedIn, and of course on our YouTube, or subscribe to our own channel.